Alright, so you got a Garand, maybe a CMP Expert grade. Maybe you just bought a Dupage stock. That's probably the stock I recommend. What do you do to ensure that it's going to work for you? A couple things to check for first and foremost, and then we'll go proceed on to accurizing. So the stock didn't come on the rifle. The first thing I would do is even without this ferrule on, if it's on there, no big deal, but it can blur up the lines of some of these tests. But take your stock, place it on your receiver legs like that. I like them to be a bit tighter than that. That's not bad. It's not like it's going to rattle back and forth. I like them to be a little bit tighter on the legs of the receiver. Take it and make sure that it doesn't rock back and forth drastically. This one isn't bad. Then what you can do is take a look at the top and make sure you don't have anything funny. You can get your trigger guard and see if it'll go in first, but take a look at this. This stock I actually am not going to use. I already fit a replacement, to be honest, but I'm showing you why I didn't. It's not touching on the lower part of this receiver at all on either side under this part of the receiver, and I'll show you where it is touching here. But take a look at that. If it isn't doing that, you're going to have to glass bit it to get ultimate accuracy. You can still shoot it, but I wouldn't use it on a match rifle like this. But take a look at where this is contacting. We have right there at the heel, just the spot there. Nothing all the way up until right here. Then we got solid line contact here, and we have nothing at all through here. That's not good. You want to have contact there. Let me show you a GI stock to show you kind of what we want. Here's a GI stock, and this is what we want. We have solid heel contact. It's about 1.4 inches back from the tip of the heel to the very end of the receiver. And then you have solid contact here, and that's good. Typically the Dupage stocks, that's the only bad one I have had of them that I haven't been able to use. Typically you will have contact all the way through the whole top of here and on your heel. Now that's okay. Preferably you do want a gap. So I like to take a little bit of 220 sandpaper and a flat edge, and I like to tape off right where 1.4 inches from the tail, the receiver, and I like to relieve that just very, very faint. Let me show you how faint I want that. So here it is, a bit exaggerated as I know I have my trigger guard locked all the way in. But you can kind of see, you see the line through there? That's what you want. You want just a little, like a business card or less of airspace from right here all the way through. And once you fit the top of that stock, you want to make sure you have good trigger lockup before you do anything to the stock. But once you fit that, put your trigger guard in, and you want your trigger guard to start getting tension about right there, ideally, and right at the tip of your trigger. And pay attention to how this trigger guard is fit in here. You want to have a gap at the front of the trigger guard there. You don't want it contacting the wood. That can lead to chips. You want a slight gap between the trigger guard and the receiver there. You want a gap all the way around this trigger guard here. If you have a milled trigger guard like this rifle up here, you want to make sure that it closes and doesn't contact that. And then take your trigger guard out after you have that all fit, and what you want is you see these angled cuts right in here. You don't want any contact on those. What will contact those is, you see your trigger guard here, up here, as you close it, that angle can contact your stock and it can give you a false lockup. So you actually think you're getting a better lockup than you are, but it's actually just the trigger guard contacting the stock. So you don't want the trigger guard to contact the stock anywhere right there. Ensure that your heel is firmly pressed down. Even if you don't gap off this, you need that heel to be firmly pressed down on the edge. That can actually cause problems with your trigger guard resetting here. So, like, as it comes back, if you don't have big enough, it can not completely get under that snap if your heel is too high up. And if it doesn't get that, you can actually have hammer follow, potentially doubles, dangerous situation. So make sure your heel's firmly down. Also keep in mind, if you do modify, if you're touching like maybe on the front here and not on the back, you do modify this and you lower the back of the receiver down. From here to here is kind of a crucial area. So you want to make sure that you don't go too far down, because as you see, your trigger, if your trigger goes, you have too little a distance between your trigger guard and here, it's pretty hard to get. But your trigger guard will actually press against the top of that, and that can rub your bolt pretty hard right on here. And if your bolt's rubbing pretty hard on that, you could have malfunctions because you're slowing down your bolt speed quite drastically. So keep that in mind. That is a crucial deal. These Dupage stocks are going to be close. If anything, you're going to have a bit of a heel gap and you'll have to relieve up here. Like I said, that one, I'm not sure what happened. Just the milling in here was bad, but it's not like it's unsafe. It's just not perfect. Another thing on these Dupage stocks, after you fit all of that we talked about, is take and relieve the insides of these a little bit. I like to take the handguards and everything off my stock or off my barreled receiver, and I like to put just the lower band on, and that way you can clip the lower band in here and observe the distances between your barrel and your stock. You want the barrel not to be touching here. Show you this new Dupage stock as a comparison. See how there's just sharp lines, and that's a lot thinner. That actually will oftentimes contact your barrel when you have it locked in with that lower band. I'll show you a GI stock just as a comparison of what they did. So here's that GI stock again. You can see they did relieve it as well. Not sure why Dupage doesn't do that, but it's pretty easily fixable. Another thing is you want to make sure this stock ferrule doesn't sit too high. If it sits too high, you can actually have your op rod touch on the inside there. Touch your stock ferrule. This one's not. This one's just polished from, I actually had this stock ferrule and I was, I believe I was in here, I don't know, sanding. I'm not sure why it's polished, but it's not from my op rod rubbing. But that is something to keep in mind. You actually want this stock ferrule to pull somewhat down on your barrel when you have it assembled. You can see this one, when I squeeze it, the gap between your handguards and your stock will actually get less. That's because this ferrule is tensioning down on the barrel, and that's what you want. Let me show you what else we want here. Another tip for accuracy, what I like to do is make sure my handguards are not contacting my stock in any way. Generally they will, and you gotta relieve just a little bit of material from these handguards so they don't contact the stock. You want an even gap all the way around purely for aesthetics, but you want to have some gap. Otherwise, this handguard's connected to your barrel, and this will interfere with harmonics. The only thing you want touching your barrel is this stock ferrule right here, pulling it down. You also want to have a gap between your handguard and your receiver. It's the same thing about harmonics. Another thing is work your op rod back and forth and make sure you're not push it down, pull it back, and pull it up and pull it back. Make sure you're not contacting your stock anyway with your handguard, or your handguard with the op rod. Right here, see where that relief is? Typically you have to relieve those, otherwise this op rod will actually impact your handguard and it'll chip over time and look terrible. So that's another place to look for. Then let's talk your front handguard here. This front handguard, you want a little bit of play like that. It's a little more than I typically like. But what I like to do is switch out gas locks until I get something close to that. I don't worry where the gas lock times on the barrel really. These Criterion barrels, typically they're not like GI barrels and they'll time really weird. So I just try to get them timed so this has the proper amount of play. If you don't have another gas lock, or you don't have, or you're, I don't know, see, whatever you have doesn't work, you can take this handguard off, and if it's too tight, try to just take this and put it on a flat edge, like a table here, and remove that little step that goes inside your lower band here, and just relieve it just a little bit. You don't want the outside to touch anywhere, but you just want it a little bit relieved so you have a little bit of play. That way, as your barrel heats up and gets longer, it doesn't pull away from pressure. If it pulls away from pressure, you're going to have your target, or your accuracy on your target is not going to be the same, as your barrel harmonics are changing as it heats up. That can create flyers when it gets hot. You can remove with your trigger guard. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I like to switch out to have trigger guards that have flatter lugs if I have too tight of lockup. And that way, as the wood compresses, you can switch out to those rounder lug trigger guards and get tight lockup again. If you don't want to do that, or you are really even too tight with that, you can remove this area a little bit and the back here just a little bit. Like I said, wood's going to compress over time. Do what you can to keep it as tight as possible. I like them to start getting tight like right at the tip of the trigger, like right there. This trigger guard has flatter lugs, and I'm going to run this one until it starts to get a little too loose for my liking, and then I'm going to switch out to the better one I have. Other Garand accurizing tips. Oh, I'll show you one more thing with the stock that we're on it. This is something that you don't often hear about, but it is an issue. You can see the back of your stock here. See how I have a little bit of a wave right there? That is because my firing pin was contacting the rear of this stock. You can actually see that in this new Dupage stock. You see the chip right there? That's from where the firing pin was contacting the wood. You need to relieve a little bit of that out so you don't have that happen. So that's something to keep in mind. Once you take your rifle, take all the parts off, your spring, everything except for the op rod and bolt. Do a tilt test outside of the rifle. Put it in your stock, lock your trigger guard in, and do another tilt test in your stock to make sure you don't have any rubbing in here or along here or anything. If you do, you're going to want to correct that for function. Let's take our receiver here. I'll show you a couple other things to check. Don't take your sight apart too frequently. I don't like to do, but grab your peep and have it set at 100 yards, which is about 10 clicks up. Feel for movement. You shouldn't have any movement. If you do, you need a new top spring. These springs, you can actually sometimes bend them back into spec to get tension on this peep again. I'd try that first, but get a new top spring. They make them, they're the same ones for the M1A. So if your peep's loose, get a new spring and you're going to be good to go. Gas cylinder. Don't take these gas cylinders off all the time because you'll loosen the splines on your barrel. And when you do take your gas lock and everything apart, what I like to use is one of these gas cylinder wrenches. That one's made by Fulton Armory. If you don't use one of these gas lock wrenches to hold it in place as you loosen your valve, what will happen is you will actually put rotational force on those splines and they will loosen over time. So I would get one of those and always use it when you loosen, but don't take your gas cylinder off a lot. If your gas cylinder is loose and you can move it back and forth, or if it slides on really easily, you might want to peen these gas cylinder or these just these lugs here that are splines, so your gas cylinder will go on a little tighter. Start halfway back, don't start at the front, or your gas cylinder is going to be hard to step on or hard to get on. But just do little taps with a punch that's wider than this slot and peen all three of them, and just do a little at a time until you get a good solid gas cylinder lockup. And another thing, make sure your clip latch doesn't contact your stock. That can be an issue. I haven't seen it on one of these Dupage stocks, but that can be an issue with your hole right there. But yeah, as you can see, this is my bad fitting stock here that I'll probably glass bed it someday to get it right, but this one fits up perfect, and hopefully that gets you guys match ready. Shows you some of the fitting issues. These stocks are not, if you do remove material from these, I also like to fit the butt plate. That's another thing I guess I'll mention. I'll make this video a little longer, but I like to fit the butt plate because it can be grossly oversized. I also like to fit the handguards. You can see this one. Look how oversized that handguard is. I like to fit the handguards a little better than that. But as you're fitting those, you're going to have to restain, because these stocks, as they come from Dupage, are stained, pre-stained. So keep that in mind. You're going to have to restain it, and these stocks are unfinished as they come from the CMP or Dupage, so you'll want to do tung oil or linseed oil after you get all your fitting done. Yeah, this stock, all in all, I was a bit disappointed with, to tell you the truth. Not only, I don't know, you have stuff like that, but the fitment was just pretty horrible under here, and for a shooter, it'll work. It would work just fine, but when you buy a CMP Expert grade, you're probably buying it for matches. So I was a bit disappointed to find that. Really no knock on the CMP. You can see their CMP logo's a double strike too. I don't know. I'd like to see a little better quality, but really, I mean, it's a good program and everything. I'm not going to say anything too bad about them. I love the rifles I get from them, and I've had really good customer service, but just keep that in mind when you get these expert grades. They're not ready to go right outside of the box. As a match rifle, you're going to want to do some fitting and other tuning to them. But, well, good shooting to you. I hope you have a good day, and hope you got something from the video. Thank you.